Welcome to This Explainer. You know that exhausting, sinking feeling, right? You work incredibly hard all month. You pour literal sweat and energy into your job. But when the end of the month finally rolls around, poof, there is absolutely nothing left over. It's so frustrating. You start doubting yourself, kind of wondering, are my earnings just too low? Am I missing some crucial skill everyone else seems to have? Well, today we are breaking down a really powerful, eye-opening lesson from a grandfather that completely flips this frustrating narrative on its head. Okay, let's dive into this. What if your income stopped tomorrow? Yeah, it's a completely terrifying question, isn't it? Just take a quick second to really feel the weight of that. If your one single paycheck suddenly vanished, what would your reality actually look like next week? The grandfather in our source material asks this exact question to shake his grandson awake. It completely shatters the illusion of safety and establishes the absolute terrifying stakes of relying on just a single stream of income. Section 1. The Single Income Trap. As our story begins, we find the grandson completely trapped by financial worry. Seeing his grandson totally consumed by the stress of living paycheck to paycheck, completely convinced that his abilities were fundamentally flawed, the grandfather drops a piece of absolute mic drop wisdom. He smiles and tells him, the problem isn't income, it's mindset. So the crucial point here is, the real danger you are facing isn't necessarily that your paycheck is too small. Actually, scratch that. It's more like the underlying danger is that you are relying entirely on one single source of money. Most people live in this constant low-grade fear because they hinge their entire existence, their whole survival, on just one job. Moving on to Section 2, a change in mindset. Because, understanding a philosophical concept is one thing, but actually seeing it work in the real world is a whole different ballgame. So to shift this lesson from abstract theory to gritty reality, the grandfather takes his grandson for a walk outside. And as they're walking, he asks him what I call the 1-hour question. Suppose you had just 1 extra hour a day. What could you do with it? Well, the grandson immediately dismisses the idea. He's like, no way, what can anyone possibly achieve in just 1 single hour? But the grandfather laughs because this is the most massive mistake people make. We dismiss small blocks of time as totally useless. We think if we don't have a full free day, we can't build anything. But dismissing those tiny pockets of time absolutely guarantees you will never start. To prove his point, the grandfather points to a local tea seller working on the street. During the day, this guy is a manual laborer doing exhausting, back-breaking physical work. But at night, he sets up right outside his house and sells tea. And this brilliantly illustrates the core lesson here. He isn't wealthy, but he is incredibly smart. Why? Because he actively refused to leave his family's livelihood at the mercy of just one daily wage. He built his own safety net. Section 3. Building a side income. We've established the why, so now let's get into the highly energetic and pragmatic how. The grandfather lays out a literal how-to checklist, telling his grandson that to start a side income, you really only need 3 fundamental things: time, skill, and patience. That's the whole shebang. You don't need a massive bank loan. You don't need an MBA or rich parents. By breaking the process down into these 3 abstract concepts, starting a side hustle suddenly stops being an intimidating, impossible mountain and becomes a highly actionable staircase you can walk right up today. Let's talk about that first requirement, time, and specifically the number 30. We're talking about exactly 30 minutes. The grandfather tells him to rigorously evaluate his 24 hours. Just track where every single hour goes. If you do this honestly, you will easily find just 30 minutes a day. That is the exact unit of time you need to get started. You take those 30 minutes
and you dedicate them entirely to learning or practicing a small skill. Nothing else, just half an hour. Let's move to and see how this builds. When you first start using those 30 minutes, the reality is, well, you probably won't make much money. In fact, your initial payout isn't cash at all, it's experience. You're trading your time for a really high volume of learning. But as the grandfather wisely points out, as you push forward into the future, that accumulated experience inevitably transforms into actual wealth. Your competence grows, and the income naturally follows. It's a real game changer. Section 4. 3 paths to start. You do not need massive capital to start. You just need the right path. Now, what's really interesting about this slide is how cleanly your options break down into 3 accessible paths. First, we have the skill-based path. That's monetizing something you already know how to do, like teaching, video editing, or writing. Second is product-based. This is buying and selling or creating goods yourself, like our tea seller example, cooking food, or flipping items online. And third is digital, leveraging your mobile phone or the internet for content creation, freelancing, or online services. Think about it for a second. Which of these 3 paths best fits your life right now? Section 5. The power of consistency. Because now, we absolutely must address the single biggest hurdle in this entire journey. And that hurdle is the 5 to 10 day trap. Look, most people get inspired, they pick one of the paths we just discussed, and they work on it for 5 to 10 days. Then, when they don't see massive financial results rolling in, they get deeply frustrated. They say, this work is bad, it doesn't pay off, and they quit entirely. I need to be firm here, just as the grandfather was. The work isn't bad, our impatience is bad. We're literally expecting a massive harvest from a seed we just planted last week. So we come right back to the number 30. We saw 30 minutes earlier, but now this number connects to days. The grandfather promises his grandson that if he can commit to just 30 days of nonstop, consistent work, using those 30 minutes every single day without quitting, he will start to see a real difference. It visually reinforces the micro-action needed to overcome our own impatience. It's all about surviving those first 30 days of building the habit. As we wrap up, I want to leave you with the ultimate philosophical contrast of this explainer. On one hand, a single income keeps you alive. It pays the bills, it feeds you, but it leaves you totally vulnerable to a single point of failure. But on the other hand, a second income keeps you safe. When you build that second path, you are no longer at the absolute mercy of circumstance. You step out of mere survival mode and step into true, deep security. So, here is my challenge to you to end our time together. What will you start today? Will you take the skill-based route, the product-based route, or the digital route? Don't wait for a windfall of cash or a completely free weekend that's probably never actually going to come. Make one small decision today. Find your 30 minutes and start building what will become your biggest support system tomorrow. Thank you so much for joining us for this explainer, and keep learning.